So the first question is, why do you think living organisms need food regularly? Why is there a constant, like everyday need of food? So please respond on chat. To carry out different activities, but why? Okay, so somebody has said energy, for doing work, for energy, to survive. So why is energy? Some disturbance. Yeah, so people are saying for activities, for work, for survival, to repair old and worn out tissues. So for growth and maintenance. Yeah, so why should energy be needed for survival itself, to live? Why should energy be required for life? I mean, why is energy essential to life? I mean, as biology teachers, can you answer that question in a life processes? Yeah, so what kind of life processes? Body functioning. So why is energy so vital to our functioning, our body processes? Every living organism requires energy. I mean, can you just think of the reason? What is this energy used for? I mean, even when you are sleeping, even when you are unconscious, even then your body needs energy. So as fuel, yes. So yeah, that's true. I mean, in different words, you people all have said that energy actually gives us all. I mean, like firstly, there are these body systems, like there are things, material circulating through the body, and there's of course digestion happening, and so many other processes happening at a large scale. But even inside our cells, there are like thousands of chemical reactions, chemical processes going on all the time. Cells are alive, if our body is alive, and life itself requires a constant. To be living, any cell, any portion of our body requires a constant supply of energy. Without even 1 minute is not possible without that much energy, and that the portion which does not get energy will die. So to keep any part of our body living, life itself is maintained with energy. So then the next question is food energy? What do you think? I mean, will you call food as energy? We get yeah. So Durga Karti has said that okay, she has said that cell needs energy in the form of ATP. Right now, I mean, I'm not asking which form, but now my question is will you call food energy? So Priscilla has said to me personally, then when it is broken, then Martha has said food is energy. Many people have said yes to this question. Some people are saying source of energy, but think of it, friends. Food, I mean, think of food, a bowl of rice. I mean, we don't call rice energy. Think of potatoes or cauliflower. That's not energy. What is it? I mean, think of oil or eggs or meat. It's source of energy, but in scientific terms, what will you call all this? Flour or rice? It's okay. Mingma is saying carbohydrates. Uma Sharma is saying fuel. Chukila is saying nutrients. But I mean, before that, this whole category of substances. Vishal Rai is saying nutritive energy, but I will first say all this is matter. The matter which has nutrients, it has components of food, but firstly it's matter. Food is actually matter. Some matter which we utilize as fuel, that's true, we utilize it for giving energy, but it is matter. See, it's like very important to actually differentiate between energy and matter, because this is something children do not understand. I mean, like here we are not doing it, but in some session we may ask them, okay, is clouds matter? Is energy, is light matter? Or is fog matter? Or is sound matter? Like giving a whole lot of examples of which of them is matter and which of them is energy, and they are confused. They are actually confused. So it's important for us to distinguish between matter and energy, because both have very different properties. Can you quickly tell me very essential properties of matter? Some very essential properties that matter must have. For us to call something as matter, it occupies space. That's correct. It occupies space uniquely. I mean, if there is matter put somewhere, it will not allow any other matter to come in here. That's not what energy does. I mean, this room has light. It's full of light. We can say that light is occupying this space, but it's not occupying it uniquely. It will allow other light to come in. It will allow other matter to come in. It will allow other kinds of energy to come in. But matter, when it fills up some space, it fills it uniquely. It cannot be destroyed or created. Well, that quality energy also has. Yeah, so now, as GK Nepal has said, it occupies space and has mass. This is the one distinguishing factor between energy and matter. Energy doesn't have mass. Heat doesn't have mass. Light doesn't have mass. Any kind of energy, electricity doesn't have mass. So, but when we are having matter, if you are having food, you are having a bowl of rice, it has mass. You will have 100 grams or 200 grams or whatever. I mean, it will have mass. So food is matter. It's not directly energy. See, this is something we should allow children to understand, because then only they will understand that the body needs to extract energy from this matter. From this bowl of rice, energy has to be extracted from here. By itself, this is not energy, right? So how does food give energy? I mean, if we need to extract energy out of food, which is matter, so how do we extract energy from matter? Khushbu, since the session is going on, please now let's not get into good morning, etc. Instead of that, please let's talk about the questions we are discussing. No greetings just now. Priscilla is saying, Priscilla, please write in public so that others can see your answer. Okay, so Diki Doma has said the matter needs to get oxidized, and Martha is saying broken down and biochemical reaction, breaking down into simplest form. See, even if matter is broken down into simplest form, it will remain matter. I mean, if I turn rice into glucose, glucose is also matter. So even if you bigger molecules, if you break into smaller molecules, still matter. So breaking into simplest form is not how where energy is lying. Where is the energy lying? So through digestion, through enzymatic activity, due to metabolism, through respiration, you are all naming the process. But how do we extract energy from matter? So Martha has said reaction in the cell with the help of enzymes. Yeah, the key word here is reaction, chemical reaction. Without making matter go through chemical reactions, you cannot extract energy out of it. And that's why so when we make matter go through chemical reactions, where chemical bonds are broken and made again. So it's all about chemical bonds. So Uma Sharma is saying oxygen is used, but oxygen is used in chemical reaction. See, chemical reaction is important because there is a kind of digestion which is done without oxygen also. So oxygen is important mostly, but there can be some kind of digestion where or utilization of food even without oxygen. But important thing is it must be a chemical reaction. And here, for children's sake, I'm like giving a simple example that chemical reactions can be both kinds. They can be exothermic or endothermic, which means either a chemical reaction gives out energy or it takes in energy. So here, suppose we burn hydrogen and oxygen, together to give water, energy is giving out. Hydrogen burns with a lot of energy. I mean, it gives out a lot of energy. So this is an exothermic reaction giving out energy. It can be heat or light. Hydrogen burns with an explosion. So a lot of energy is giving out. But the same reaction, if you reverse, which means if you try breaking water into hydrogen and oxygen, then you need to give energy to water. Water will not break by itself. You have to supply a lot of energy, and we normally supply it in the form of electricity. But various endothermic chemical reactions take in energy and break down, or let's say the older bonds, the earlier bonds in water are broken, and new bonds are created in hydrogen and oxygen. So I mean, and this is the same reaction in reverse is an endothermic reaction. So food, what do you think when we make food go through reactions? Will it be an endothermic reaction or an exothermic reaction? Food will have to go through a chemical process or a chemical reaction. What kind of reaction will that be? As Martha says, it will be an exothermic reaction. The body chooses an exothermic reaction because it wants to take out energy from food. So it makes food go through a chemical reaction so that energy is given out, which our body uses. So firstly, friends, it is important for children to understand that food, digestion of food is a chemical reaction. Say, often the way textbooks talk about it or way people show, so children might think that, okay, when we are chewing it, we are breaking it into smaller pieces. In the stomach, we are making it into a pulp. But that's mechanical breakdown. I mean, when we churn things in a mixie, that's mechanical breakdown. But that's not chemical breaking down. Chemical breakdown means that there is energy involved and the molecules change. They change into new molecules. That's an important thing to understand. So if possible, I mean, if children have not studied about chemical reaction, you can tell them that completely new substances are formed. The old substances are broken down. Their structure is broken down. Their inside particles are broken down, and completely new particles are created or new substances are created. Right. So now, friends, I'm now showing an animal body as just a box, and I'm showing matter 1 and energy 1. So animal body takes some matter. What matter does it take? From outside, from its environment. Think of any animal. See, I'm right now not only talking about humans. It could be any animals, cats or dogs or amoeba or any other animal, lions or cows. So they take food and oxygen, correct? They take food and oxygen. Anything else? Water, yes. So food, oxygen, water is matter they take. Do they take energy from outside, which we have written here as energy 1? Do they take energy from outside directly? Can animals absorb energy from outside? So Martha has said no, but some people are saying sunlight. So friends, one thing is important for us to see, that animals can take some sunlight on their surface. I mean, can absorb some heat in their body from the sunlight, but that will be really remaining mostly at the surface. It's like they can't get all their energy from this outside source, external source. Very little can be absorbed, but they need energy. They need to generate energy inside. For all their needs, they need to generate energy inside. If they don't generate energy inside, they will die. This external energy, no animal can live on only sunlight. Plants can live on sunlight. See, that's an important difference. Plants can live on sunlight alone, taking energy from outside. We can't. We'll die. You keep sitting in the sun for however many hours, you or any animals, but they will die because that energy is very tiny. That absorption is very tiny. So it's not enough for any of the body's needs. So plants take in energy, take in matter. They also give out matter. Can you give me examples of matter given out? What is the matter which is thrown out? Yes, so many kinds of excretion, carbon dioxide, urine. Oxygen is not thrown out, not by animals at least. Sweat. All right, so extra water, anything which is excess or which is waste for our body is thrown out. Yeah, so matter is thrown out in many forms. Anything extra or anything which is waste. How about energy? Is energy thrown out? What do you think? Okay, Chukila has said that heat energy. That's correct. So yes, I mean, whether there are mammals which generate heat inside and keep, I mean, their body temperature at constant. But even if it's not mammals, it's reptiles or others, they are constantly generating energy inside, and much of this energy will be lost to the surroundings as heat. All processes inside the body will waste some energy as heat. I mean, science tells us in later classes, thermodynamics tells us that no process can be done where energy is utilized, where 100% energy can be utilized completely. Some will be always wasted, and normally, which is heat. So yeah, so even animals lose much energy as heat. So some energy and matter is thrown out. So there is a constant inflow and outflow of matter and energy from animal bodies. So now we take matter largely as food, and like you said, oxygen and water. So can you say that what major substances or materials make up our food, animal food? What do we eat as food? Big categories, suppose. We eat other plants and animals. So people are, so Estella said carbon, not carbon, but carbohydrates. I mean, carbohydrates is the correct word. So carbohydrates, yeah, fruit, vegetables, cereals, meat, and all that is correct. But if we say large category substance, one is carbohydrates, as you people have said. What else other than carbohydrates? Fats. So carbohydrates, proteins, fats. Yeah, that's correct. These are like major three chunks of material: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And in small quantities, the major nutrients are these. What are the small quantities we take? Minerals, vitamins, and minerals. Yes, correct. So these are like the five things: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, and vitamins. Right? Now I have one important question. See, since we eat other animals and plants, their bodies are also made up of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. I mean, the same substances make up the bodies of animals and other animals and plants. So my question is, now it's an important question. Why do we need to digest what we eat? Why can't we take carbohydrates directly and utilize it directly? I mean, or proteins. I mean, which means what I'm suggesting is, suppose I take egg. So egg white I know is protein. So why can't we simply churn it and put it into our blood and supply to our cells? Similarly, why can't we, let's say, dissolve sugar, put it into our blood and supply directly to our cells? How about fruit juice? Fruit juice, because they are in complex form. But our body is also made up of in a complex form. So what's the problem when we have to make up our body? So complex form should be all right. I mean, body is made up out of protein and carbohydrates and fats. So why is the need to break it into simpler forms? Because these simpler forms which we break down will again be added up to make complex forms. So why does the body need to take all this trouble? See, what I'm saying is, okay, think of another animal that we eat. Suppose we eat a chicken. So its body is made up of carbohydrates, fat, protein, mineral, vitamin, and our body is made up out of the same things. So we should have been, I mean, why go through this large process of digestion? We could have simply taken chicken in like a liquid form, or maybe put inside our system directly. Mukhya is saying unable to absorb. I'm asking, why can't we absorb? Why can't we absorb food in complex form if we are eating the same things which our body is made up of? I mean, why do we need a digestive system at all? I mean, digestive system is there. Nature made it, or evolution made it, whatever. The molecules are large, so but that's not a problem. No? The body is smart. I mean, it could have had like large holes to absorb big molecules, big enough molecules. It could have large membranes to absorb a big molecule. Why does the body need it into simpler form? It has to be oxidized. Our body has to work, needs to be assimilated by the cells. So body structure. Okay, so Lavahari has said there are unwanted substances too that we don't need. Our system is complex, so we need in simpler forms. So, okay, one answer is that, okay, there may be unwanted substances in the food that we eat. Correct. But suppose we have only the wanted substances. I just gave you the example of, let's say, cane sugar. So cane sugar, suppose we have pure cane sugar or pure fruit juice. Everything out of it is needed by the body. Or suppose egg white, pure protein. So why can't we directly put it into our blood? Lotso is saying cells can use it as ATP only. I mean, you are talking about like, okay, an energy molecule, a molecule which is utilized for energy. But why not these big molecules? I mean, why doesn't the body have a system where big molecules can be directly taken? Big molecule of protein directly absorbed. Big molecule of carbohydrates directly taken. Big molecule of fat directly taken. Durga is saying cannot take directly. I'm asking, why doesn't it take directly? It's so wasteful. First digest it into simpler pieces, then join those pieces again to build our body. Simple forms of nutrients are soluble in blood. I mean, there are complex forms, there are complex proteins which are also soluble, complex sugars which are also soluble. I mean, I'm saying the cell could have made an arrangement, no, to directly absorb it. Needs to be in a form where it is able to react with oxygen. Actually, complex molecules also can react with oxygen. I mean, you can burn starch, you can burn a roti if you want. Okay, I mean, I just wanted you to think that, I mean, since, so Lava has said only glucose-like substances can be taken directly. It should be simple because starts with functions inside the cell, a whole individual type. Basically, friends, and Geeta Sapkota has said certain chemical reactions take place in the alimentary system, which is essential. Basically, friends, what I wanted to bring your attention to the fact that the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, and even many of these essential vitamins and minerals in our body are not identical to a chicken or a goat or plant proteins. Our proteins are different. Their building blocks are same. Building blocks are same, but our body, every species has different proteins. It has its own type of fats and own types of carbohydrates. Of course, plant and animal carbohydrates are quite different. But for example, plant bodies will have a lot of starch, but our bodies will not have will not be made out of, our cells will not be made out of starch. So that it's not the same carbohydrates, it's not the same proteins. See, why I am harping on this fact is that these are major categories. Carbohydrates, proteins, fats, these are big categories. But when we are eating carbohydrates or when we are eating proteins, the protein that we eat and the protein with which our body is made are not same. I mean, you have to bring across the idea that there are large variety of carbohydrates, there is large variety of proteins, there are large variety of fats, same with vitamins and minerals, and our body needs its own type of carbs, proteins, fats, and molecules. It needs its own molecules. So therefore, animal body, whatever it takes, has to break them down through a process of digestion and make them into simpler molecules out of which it can manufacture the proteins that it needs. It can manufacture its own carbohydrates. It can manufacture its own fats, right? So this digestion is important. See, I mean, right now I've not taken plant processes with you people, but plants do not need this huge digestive system. Do you see that? It's only an animal's need, because plants manufacture everything they need. They'll manufacture glucose, they'll manufacture other things out of the glucose. They take minerals and vitamins from the soil, but then they manufacture everything. So they don't need a digestive system, but we need a digestive system, because whatever we take needs to be broken down to make our own, fulfill our own needs. So I mean, actually this whole section was actually kept to first appreciate why animals have a digestive system at all, the purpose of the digestive system. It has two purposes: mechanical breakdown of food. So food we take is in huge chunks, so often at times solid or liquid, whatever, but that it has to be made into a pulp, completely pulp, semi-liquid, so that it can be processed by the body. And what does that processing mean? Chemical reactions, so chemical breakdown into simpler molecules, right? We'll come to all that, but that this purpose should be first clear before we get into digestion. So let's begin with carbohydrates. Friends, any comments or any questions so far? So let's look at carbohydrates. So see, friends, once again, I mean, depending on the class you are teaching, but you'll have to help children understand these dense words. Carbohydrate is a very dense word. It's like, for a child, it means nothing. Even if you say that carbohydrate resides in flour and bread and potato and so on and so forth, you can name 100 things. But what exactly is carbohydrate is something children do not understand. If they don't understand carbohydrates, they don't know its function, they don't realize what is done in its digestion. I mean, we may say we are turning starch into sugar. They have no idea what starch is, they have no idea what sugar is, and they have no idea what carbohydrate is. So it's our job as teachers to help the children understand what a carbohydrate is. So even if children have not studied chemical molecules, you can give them some idea. So this is something we have deliberately put in, and we show this to children also. Firstly, carbohydrate, we will have to say that are necessarily, so we tell children that you don't have to remember all this, but please see glucose. Glucose is one type of carbohydrate. Can you see a lot of C here? So these are actually carbon atoms. There is O here and there is H here. So carbohydrate is basically a combination of a molecule made out of carbon atoms, hydrogen atoms, and oxygen atoms. It's a big molecule. I mean, hexagonal in shape. This is what it looks like. You don't need to remember it, but at least understand that it's made out of these C, H, and O. And so all carbohydrates are made out of C, H, and O. Glucose is one simple form, and which body can use directly for energy, and that's why all carbohydrates will be broken down into glucose by all animals. I mean, glucose, and even plants manufacture glucose. So glucose is one primary, so it's the primary fuel for living organisms, major fuel. So, I mean, so the various carbohydrates that we eat are themselves CHO molecules. And one common example is starch. Starch is easy to understand because if you have seen a glucose molecule which was hexagonal, starch is just a chain. It's a chain of those molecules. So it's a glucose chain. And here, I mean, that branching chain is shown below. And if a small part is expanded, you will see glucose molecules linked together. They are linked here. I mean, that linkage you need not explain. You can simply say that glucose is, thousands of glucose molecules link up together to make starch. And it's good to ask children, have you seen starch around you? What do you think, what things contain starch? Have you seen starch? Friends, can you give me some example of things that contain starch? Because we eat starch pretty often. Yeah, rice is one very good example. Potato. Yeah, even wheat flour has, all flours have starch, a lot of starch. And rice is a very good example. And when we take out rice water, it is mostly starch. So actually, in India, there's a tradition of throwing starch water, the rice water. People think that rice becomes better by throwing that water, taking out that water. It's actually taking out most of its nutrient. Yeah, so potatoes, sweet potatoes, that white substance, even corn has that white substance. It's even sold as cornstarch. Dicky is saying students are confused between carbohydrate and starch. Can you suggest simple way to differentiate these two? See, you'll have to when you sorry. When you are showing all these, so you will have to say that carbohydrates is a category, and that category of substances has sugars, various kinds of sugars, various kinds of starches. So these will all come under the general category of carbohydrates. The way you will have to give some kind of example from real life. Suppose you say vehicles. So there are cars are vehicle, trucks are vehicle, cycles are vehicle. So you ask for examples of vehicles. You say vehicle is a category, and there are so many kinds of vehicles. Furniture is a category, and there are so many kinds of furniture, chairs and tables and desks and so on. So similarly, carbohydrate is a category in which there are these various types, and starch is one type, sugar is one type. I mean, normally these two are the common ones we come across in our food, but there are, of course, many kinds. So, and the important thing to understand is all carbohydrates are molecules made out of C, H, and O. So there are various arrangements. If you want, you can show some more arrangements. They are available on the on Google very easily. Various carbohydrates. So you can show children, look, if they get arranged differently, they'll make a different substance. If they arrange differently, they make a different substances, and all that. So they are. And the word carbohydrate came because from carbon and water. Hydrate shabd is watery. So actually people earlier thought that it's carbon plus water. That's not what it is actually. It is like, but it has these three, it has carbon, it has both the atoms of water, H and O. C, H and O are all there, but it's not carbon with water only. The ratio can be very, very different. So Aruna is asking, is squash we eat as vegetable also has starch-like substance? Yes, yes. A lot of things, even dals that we eat, pulses, also have a lot of starch. Many things. I mean, it's not like normally the things we eat do not have a single substance, a single nutrient. They may have carbohydrate with protein. Even rice has some protein. Wheat has carbohydrate plus protein, and so many other things that we eat is never pure carbohydrate or pure starch. Generally not. It will have many minerals along. It will have many vitamins along. It will have some protein. It may have some fat also. But yeah, these when we say that these the foods here shown, these will have large amount of carbohydrates. Not only carbohydrates, but large amount of carbohydrates. Major source of carbohydrates. You can see pulses here. So pulses also have so much protein, right? So any other question? The corn flour that you get in the market is mostly starch. Corn flour and your arrowroot or arrowroot, which is called, or maida is mostly starch. That refined wheat flour, that is mostly starch. And actually, to children, we also show that starch dissolved in water is insoluble, whereas glucose, when it's broken down into glucose, that's soluble. So you can show that very clearly, that starch doesn't give a clear solution, but glucose does, right? So what does our body do with glucose? Our body in digestion will break up starch because starch is a big, huge molecule, difficult to utilize by our body. It will break it down into individual glucose molecules. That's what our digestive system does. And what does it do with the glucose? Then this glucose is burned with oxygen, slow burning with oxygen. So glucose molecule plus oxygen molecules are put into a chemical reaction. It's like slow burning. The way you burn paper with oxygen or wood with oxygen, similarly, glucose is made to react with oxygen to give carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Actually, here showing ATP is not correct. Energy is given out. That energy is now stored as ATP. I mean, depending on level of children, you need not talk about ATP. If it's class 10 children, of course, the ATP is mentioned in the textbook. So you will have to talk about ATP. So this process of burning glucose is what we call a cellular respiration. It happens in cells, where cells, whenever they need energy, they will burn some or utilize some glucose, burn it with oxygen. So these are the waste products, and the energy generated is actually stored in something called ATP. So what is ATP? ATP is another molecule. ATP is not energy. ATP is a molecule. It's matter. It's another molecule smaller than glucose. See, important thing is, from a big molecule, the cell is storing energy in a smaller molecule called ATP. So here we have shown that roughly 38 ATP molecules store as much energy as one glucose molecule. So it's like as if energy is taken from a big molecule and stored in a smaller molecule. How will that help? I mean, why do you think, take energy from a molecule and then store into another molecule? Why this trouble? Why would the cell do this? Why a smaller molecule? for future needs. So why can't glucose be used for future needs? Glucose is also a molecule, so the cell could have stored glucose. And the glucose can be directly burned by the cell. So why not glucose? Priscilla saying it is immediately digested while starch is stored. See, animal bodies do not store starch. They do not convert glucose into starch back again. In fact, if you notice that we eat starch, break it down into glucose, and then break down glucose and store as ATP. So starch is not the storage thing. Plants do. Plants do it. They store the starch because they manufacture glucose and store it as starch. We eat starch, break it down into glucose, and then store as ATP. So my question is, why can't they store glucose instead of storing as ATP? Any guess? That, I mean, storing energy inside a big molecule versus storing energy in a small molecule will have some advantages, no? What could be the advantage of having smaller molecules? ATP is energy currency. So my question is, why can't glucose be energy currency? Large number to be stored. So ATP will be in a larger number because cells are too smaller. Cells are billions of times bigger than a glucose molecule. And it will have to store, for one glucose, it will have to store 38 ATPs. So Geeta is saying due to its large molecules, energy stored in the form of ATP would be readily available. See, ATP will also have to go through a chemical reaction. Glucose also has to go through a chemical reaction. Consumption of less energy, release of energy will be easy. Basically, friends, glucose is instantly used by the cells as energy. ATP is convertible. Even glucose is convertible. Okay, see, anything that can go through a chemical reaction inside the cell is convertible. The reason is basically, friends, it's called energy currency because it is really that whenever the cell needs energy, since glucose is simple form, it is immediately absorbed by blood. See, right now we are talking about the cell. Already the blood has absorbed from digestive system, taken to the cells. We are talking about the cell, inside of the cell. The cell has glucose. Cell breaks it down into smaller molecules. I mean, it burns glucose, does that chemical reaction, which I was just, this chemical reaction. Carbon dioxide, water are waste substances. And whatever is energy is released, that energy is now stored in another molecule called ATP, which is a smaller molecule. We are saying that 38 ATPs are made out of one glucose. I mean, which means energy in one glucose is now stored in 38 ATPs. The ATP. The advantage is that this is so glucose is a molecule which is a supplier of energy. ATP is also a molecule that is a supplier of energy. So why do you think glucose is respired to give ATP molecules? This was the question I was asking. And the answer is, Dicky Doma is saying large amount of energy. Glucose has the larger amount of energy. ATP has a smaller amount of energy. So Divya has said release of energy in required amount. Actually, yes. See, if you have a, if you treat it as currency. I mean, think of currency notes with us. If you have a 2000 rupees notes and you go to the market and you want to buy a biscuit or a matchbox, you are in trouble. Too much value. For small things, you need 10 rupee notes or 5 rupee coins or 20 rupees notes. So you need smaller currency, smaller quantities for doing little things. So a big source of energy is not always useful. Cell requires energy in various quantities. For like a large number of chemical reactions happen inside the cell, thousands and thousands of them, and all the time energy is needed in small quantities, big quantities, various amounts of energy. So it's like, so that's what the cell is doing. When the energy is coming from glucose, I mean, you can think of it like this. It's like ATP. I mean, there's first a molecule called ADP, adenosine diphosphate, which has double phosphate, that combines with another phosphate. So this is another reaction, ADP to ATP. So another phosphate is absorbed and energy is absorbed. So ATP is formed, adenosine triphosphate is formed. So this is like a discharge battery and this is like a charge battery. I mean, this example works well because these days in our mobiles, we keep charging our mobiles. So it's like ADP is as if discharge battery. ADP absorbs another phosphate and energy to make ATP molecule. And whenever the cell needs, it breaks its ATP, and releases energy and releases the phosphate and becomes ADP again, which is we are showing here. So there's a cycle. So this is ADP, adenosine diphosphate. You can forget about the rest of the structure, but it has two phosphates. This is the discharge battery. When it has to store energy, it will take the energy from food, which is like energy which has been released by burning of glucose. It will take that energy, it will take another phosphate and make the triphosphate, which is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphates. And this is this molecule stored as the currency. Whenever the cell needs, it breaks some ATPs, energy released, phosphate released. So this becomes the discharge cell, which is then given fresh energy input and a phosphate to turn into ATP. Is this clear? What we are saying, is this clear? What we have shown through the diagrams? So any questions so far? So we have kind of talked about the process of respiration. I mean, firstly, we have talked about how starch is broken into glucose. Any kind of carbohydrates are broken into glucose. And then glucose is utilized for energy release inside the cell. And the cell stores that, because see, energy cannot be directly stored. You try holding heat in your hand or try holding light in your hand. You can't, or electricity in your hand. The only way energy can be stored is inside molecules, inside matter, inside chemical bonds. So it'll be there in one molecule. All fuels are actually matter, but it's like inside the chemical bonds, there is energy stored. So the body takes in a large, big molecule like starch, breaks it down into smaller glucose, another molecule, and then further breaks down glucose or burns glucose to make even a smaller molecule, which is ATP, and keeps it for use. So as per use, it utilizes ATPs, right? So far clear? Shall I move ahead? See, some of these things are mentioned in the curriculum without explaining them properly. These names are given. ATP is given in the curriculum in class 10. So many things are just given in the curriculum in textbooks. They are just mentioned without explaining, which is what is problematic about how our curriculum is presented to children. But then they just mug up all this. Carbohydrate is mugged up, glucose is mugged up, everything is mugged up without understanding. It's no point. There's no point telling children like that and making them, into parrots, mugging up stuff. So, but if you understand it, if you explain and they understand, then this is interpreting our body, our world, how it functions, how our bodies function. Then knowledge is empowering. Knowledge is empowering only when it's understood. It's empowering for all of us as well as for our children, right? So shall I move ahead, friends? Okay. So now let's come to proteins. So proteins again is a category and which has a large variety of proteins. Proteins are thousands and thousands. There are endless varieties of proteins, and our own body and animal bodies and even plant bodies have a very, 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 very large number of proteins having large number of functions. But what are proteins? They are basically chains of or formations made out of amino acids. Amino acids, so we have given 2 amino acids here, 2 simple ones. As you can see, amino acids are also made out of C, H, and O, but there is also a nitrogen atom here. This NH2 group is the amine group, because of which the name amino acid. This is of course an organic acid. You can see COOH here. So there are, like, our body has 20 types of amino acids. So, but all amino acids will have this. I mean, here I should have removed this. This is also NH2. Here another hydrogen H plus is added. So this is NH3 plus. But basically this is NH2 group in all amino acids. So there are these 20 or more varieties of amino acids. And when they, like, a protein is a folded chain, folded in very complicated shapes of hundreds or thousands of amino acids. So the protein needs to be broken down into the smaller chain and finally into this individual amino acids. This is what our digestion process is doing, breaking proteins into these individual amino acids, which our body will utilize to make its own proteins, new proteins that our body needs, our cells need. They will keep making proteins out of these basic building blocks, these amino acids. So, okay, since I'm coming to fats now, any question on proteins? Plant protein and animal proteins are typically different. There may be some common ones. Swapna ma'am, are there common plant and animal proteins also?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
So plant and animal proteins are similar but not identical. So the enzymes, if you look at it, the proteins will be similar in plants and animals, but they won't be identical. Okay. So,
yeah, that's why we need to break down plant proteins.
Yes, we need to make our own proteins whenever we need them.
Yeah. Any other question, friends? Swapna ma'am is a proper scientist, so you can ask her any question. I am an educator, but she's the scientist. So you can ask her any complicated questions also, which I can't handle. So if there are any other questions, please ask, right? So shall I move, friends, to fats? If proteins and amino acids are clear. please feel free to stop us in the middle and ask any questions. So now coming to fats. So fats are also various types. We keep hearing saturated, unsaturated, and so on, trans fats and so on. So fats are of course large number, but here we are showing one type which is called triglycerides. So if you look at your blood report, it will have, I mean, in some blood reports, you'll see amount of triglycerides. So triglyceride is one type of fat, and just to show the structure of triglyceride, there are these three chains, and joined together with the help of glycerol, which we normally call as glycerin. So this is the structure, and if you see in terms of atoms, so here's the triglyceride. This green block is the glycerol or glycerin. I mean, I feel very excited when I see this, because I think, oh, glycerin I use even for my face. So yes, or glycerin I can touch and feel, and here is glycerin making this molecule. So here's glycerol, and you can see that there are 3 carbon chains attached to it, 3 fatty acid chains so attached to it. So this is kind of one type of fat, but you can see that it is made out of just C, H, and O. There is no N here, N or anything else here. It's just C, H, and O. So what our body does in digestion is just break down these fatty acid chains and then this glycerol, which can be directly absorbed by the cells. Then cells can utilize these fatty acids and glycerol. So this is what the digestive system does. Glycerol and fatty acids are just broken down. So the fact which I was saying earlier, I'm reiterating again, that digestion is both mechanical and chemical breakdown of food, which means if you think of a potato, so when you eat a potato in whatever form, your body will turn it into, your stomach and your mouth will turn it into a pulp, even make it more liquid than this. It will make it quite liquidy, but also the starch inside the potato, which will be a long chain or a bigger molecule, will be broken down into the individual glucose molecules, right? Then its digestion would be complete, and these glucose molecules will be directly absorbed by the blood. Blood will absorb this and distribute to cells. So all the amino acids and these glucose molecules and the fatty acids, all these simpler molecules will be distributed to cells, and cells will utilize as per their needs. So friends, how do animals get their food? What do you think? I mean, it's already visible here. How do they get food? From other plants and animals. They eat other plants and animals. So here we are showing a few ways of digestion. See, we will not get too much into it, but this is mentioned in class 10. So we have also, yeah, they do the feeding. So feeding can be, there are various ways they do feeding. I mean, so just for interest's sake, we have shown amoeba here. I mean, amoeba is we know that is a unicellular organism, doesn't have specialized parts for digestion, as in it doesn't have a digestive system. So what it does is, like, since it can change the shape of its body, it will enclose the food. So it will stick out these what is called as pseudopodia. I mean, stick out these projections, engulf the food in a cavity, in a food vacuole. Then so then in that cavity, then or in that bubble, you can say, digestive enzymes will be put in. Food will be broken down. So then it is absorbed, assimilated into the body, and eventually whatever is left, I mean the useless portion, the waste is then ejected out. This cavity opens out and ejected. So I mean, no specialized organs, but the same, the cellular structure is used for digestion. And we have a video here, which I'll show. I'll have to. So actually, amoeba is eating. I'll run it again. Amoeba is eating 2 paramecium, which is also a single cellular animal, single celled animal. You can see it engulfing the 2 paramecium. Paramecia, actually. Now it's started putting digestive enzymes. So paramecium realizes that it's trapped and trying to save itself. They are trying to run away, but no escape is possible. And look here, they are dissolved. They are turned into mush, digested. And amoeba will absorb them. So this was for a single cellular organism. Now we have another very interesting bit. No, this is, wait, I'll have to close this window. So here we have what is called as a sponge. So now sponge is again a simple organism. So it has even another low effort method of getting food. So it has these holes through which seawater enters. It attaches itself to a rock or something, and then seawater enters and escapes from the top opening. So whatever nutrients are there, whatever other small organisms or whatever is there, sponge will simply filter those out from the water and the water will escape. So just by letting water flow through its body, it's getting its food. So here we have another very beautiful video. Oh, sorry. I will try sharing sound. Yeah, so I will run this video, which is showing how a sponge.
They might not look like they're doing much, but a simple demonstration shows how effectively sponges can pump water. On a reef in the Caribbean, I make a dive with a syringe filled with a non-toxic dye called fluorescein. By squirting it around the base of some sponges, we can observe how the water is moving by watching what the dye does. Within only seconds, the dye is pumped through the sponges along with the water. As you can see, a sponge is a pretty good water pump and also a good strainer. Any plankton that goes in with the water won't come back out through the osculum. Tube sponges are even more spectacular to observe. They pump.
Did you see? He's putting some colored dye at the base. The sponge takes in water, so the dye also goes in, and you can see that it's coming out from the top. And meanwhile, all the nutrition inside the water is absorbed by the sponge.
pump the dye so furiously that they look like a collection of miniature smokestacks. The ultimate test is a hefty barrel sponge. What will a big monster like this do? It takes a few seconds for the dye to work its way through the sponge. Wait for it. But then it pours out like smoke from a chimney. That's pretty good pumping from those tiny little collar cells.
So wasn't that interesting, friends? Yeah, this is so nice. One question is that is process of digestion same in unicellular organisms? Amoeba is a unicellular organism and it utilizes the cell's own structure. The cell has a mechanism for digestion. Oh, sorry. Wait. I'll have to.
Small sponges.
The amoeba is a unicellular organism. It uses the cell's own structure, which means it uses the vacuoles. And if you know the cell structure, we took cell, no? So the same lysosome will generate will go attached to the food vacuole and put in digestive enzymes, dissolve, and then the vacuole will go burst. Now we'll get into the process of digestion, human digestion, as it happens in our body. We had shown sponge, and we know that we like large animals will have multicellular large animals will have a separate system for digesting food, and it's a separate pipe. I mean, it's like a pipe which is entering and leaving the body. It's like the food doesn't mix with anything else in the system. Because food brings in wastes as well, and there are bacteria and everything. So food enters in an independent pipe and goes. The pipe can have many organs along the way, but whatever is there, the food enters, goes through that whole process and leaves out of the body without interfering with the rest of the body. Doesn't ever mix with anything directly. Whatever is digested is absorbed by the body. So we all know about the human digestive system. This is our food pipe. And we know its various parts, the mouth, the esophagus, then here the stomach, and then the stomach goes and joins the small intestine, which is a hugely folded structure, which then goes into the large intestine through its loops and then eventually leaves. And there is this large liver attached to the digestive system. And of course, there's pancreas, which is not visible here. But friends, and food like taken from the mouth is moved ahead with the help of this process called peristalsis. So it is a wave-like motion where the walls of the pipe are pressed to push food ahead. So And these are powerful movements. Under normal circumstances, food will never come in the backward direction. Only when the body decides, your digestive system decides that something is toxic or dangerous for you, there's the vomiting response initiated where food is deliberately thrown upwards, backwards. That's the digestive system's conscious response. I mean, like, it's a choice deliberately taken to throw food out. Under normal circumstances, people say that even if we are upside down or we are lying down, the peristalsis ensures that food is pushed forward and doesn't go backwards. Similarly, there are these muscles which are called sphincter muscles. Because there's so much liquid involved, the liquid should not go backwards. So there are muscles all along the way. So they are like circular rings which close. So when from the mouth, the food comes into the food pipe and enters the stomach, then the sphincter here, this valve here, this closes. It's a gate which closes, and the gate will not open and allow the food only to go ahead. Only when there's some defect happens in this sphincter or this wall, some food gets back, and this is called reflux. So we have all, or most of us, have experienced some reflux sometimes, or some people have this proper disease. So they get stomach acids into their mouth, or they get this burning sensation because of the stomach acids coming back. So, but that's not a normal situation. Under normal circumstances, food or the stomach juices will never get backwards into the mouth or earlier parts. So here's an actual video. I mean, these days, you know that through endoscopy, people send a camera inside the digestive tract and see what's happening inside. Earlier, it was not possible. Now, in fact, I mean, because my father-in-law himself went through he had some problem in his digestive tract. So they were trying to give him a capsule with a camera. So that capsule was supposed to be ingested, taken in, and the capsule would travel through the digestive tract, taking 1,000 pictures, and the camera will send those pictures to a computer terminal. So doctors can actually take 1,000 pictures inside like that within 24 hours. Of course, before that, the digestive tract is completely emptied out. This is a new technology, reasonably new technology. So the whole tract is cleaned first. The person is not given anything to eat, and they the whole, for 24 hours, the tract is made completely empty. And after that, that capsule is taken so that photos can be taken for any defect that happens inside the tract. So very interesting. So I mean, earlier the textbook gives through a story. I will not get into detail, but there was this soldier who got a bullet in his stomach, and the wound did not heal properly. So his stomach had a flap which could be opened. So that was a huge opportunity for a doctor who kept putting food inside, food tied. I mean, he would tie a piece of paneer, piece of cheese with thread, put it inside the stomach, and see after every hour what has happened to that cheese or meat, and so on. So he could see the digestive process himself, which was not possible otherwise earlier. So that was a very happy incident that happened because of an accident, that the food could be seen while being digested. But these days we can see through the stomach system, and this is what the video is. This video in full detail.
Food enters the stomach through a hole
Here's
at the
a
top.
child's. This is the sphincter opening, letting out food. This is a small baby.
The stomach is a bag of muscle
X-rays
that
showing
churns,
movement of food.
squashes, and squeezes food into liquid.
Looks a little gross.
At the same time, acids break the food down. The stomach walls protect themselves with a lining of mucus. Without it, the acids could digest parts of the stomach itself, causing stomach ulcers. About an hour later, the stomach squeezes the broken down food out through a tiny hole called the pyloric sphincter. The food enters the small intestine, an 11-foot coil of tube where we absorb most of the nutrients. The interior wall of the small intestine is lined with millions of microscopic projections called villi. These increase the surface area of the gut, making it easier to absorb nutrients. First, the pancreas pumps out a juice that neutralizes stomach acid. Then bile from the liver breaks down the fats into tiny droplets. Smaller droplets are easier for the intestine to absorb.
So, friends, we will share this video. You can see it at leisure, but we wanted to show you the action of sphincters, sphincter muscles closing. You could see those ring-like muscles closing and closing the path. And also there is that peristaltic motion which pushes food ahead. So you can see it at leisure and hear it. So now what we will do is, after
food enters the stomach through a hole at the top.
So the one question we wanted to take up is, what are enzymes? So because we keep talking about enzymes that digest food. So what do you think are enzymes? Yes, they are actually proteins, and they are biocatalysts, which means, I mean, catalyst is something that hastens a chemical reaction. A chemical reaction can get 100 times or 1,000 times or even million times faster because of an appropriate catalyst. So our body has catalysts for various chemical reactions, and since food has to be broken down into through chemical processes or chemical reactions, so these are enzymes that help in chemical reactions. And here, I mean, we have, of course, many, so they make digestion happen a lot faster. If without the enzymes, we would not be able to digest our food within a few hours or within 24 hours. So right now we will show you action of an enzyme through a very small experiment. So there are two experiments. One is, if you have a piece of chapati, roti or bread or a little cooked rice, put it into your mouth and start chewing without swallowing. Just keep chewing it for a little while. Yeah, as Vijay has also said, to increase the rate of digestion, enzymes make it possible to digest food. So right now, because our mouth has amylase, salivary amylase, which digests starch. So roti, bread, rice have starch. So you can put it into your mouth, and if you do not swallow, try not swallowing and keep chewing for a long time, it will get sweet. You will get the sweet taste because the starch is getting converted into sugar, glucose, basically glucose. Starch is being broken down into glucose, and we are also showing it on the tab through through a small experiment. So I will spotlight tab for you. I mean, those people who are seeing from a mobile will need to pin it. So friends, we have atta here. simple dry atta, wheat flour, and Assis will put just a pinch, a very small amount. Yeah, a little more maybe. Assis. Huh. And now she will put some water in it so that we get a solution of atta. I mean, it doesn't dissolve. A little more water, Assis. So it makes. So you can see it makes a whitest solution. Now, since it is starch, we will do the starch test, which is like we'll put a drop of iodine solution inside. So she's putting a weak iodine solution here. So since this is starch, you should just shake it a little. You should get the blue-black color. Yeah, so we get this blue color, which is the characteristic color we get in a starch test. Iodine, tincture iodine gives this color with starch. So we are seeing the presence of starch. Now Assis will have to spit inside. She'll have to put some saliva into this. So she has put some saliva and she'll shake it. The quantity of saliva has to be sufficient for, because there will be very little amylase here. The mouth doesn't do too much digestion, but shake a little more. And we'll have to leave it for a few minutes. Within 1 or 2 minutes, this amylase will actually act on the starch and turn it into glucose. So we will see the blue-black color. We should see the blue-black color vanish. If it doesn't vanish, then maybe a little more saliva is needed. So we'll wait for a while. Meanwhile, we'll get to the next step. But this is quite an interesting experiment for a classroom. So though it's getting slightly lesser, the color is slightly lesser, but it's not vanished completely. So let's see. Meanwhile, I'll get back to enzymes. So these are type of proteins that act as catalysts for chemical reactions in the body, and digestive enzymes facilitate the breaking down of food molecules into simpler molecules. And here is a list. See, the list is actually larger. We have only put in those which NCERT mentions. So you can see in the mouth, there is salivary amylase, which turns starch to glucose. In the stomach, we have pepsin, which I think this should be SIN. Yes, not instead of C, it should be PEP-SIN, which changes proteins to amino acids. Because proteins are peptide chains, so there is pep word here. Small intestine has lipase, so which fats are lipids, so therefore the word lip here changes fats to fatty acids and glycerol. And small intestine also has trypsin, which changes proteins to amino acids. Anyway, these names are there in the textbook. So what we are now going to do is, Assis, can we show that? Should I show? No? No. Wait, I'm talking about this mouth. Is it? Okay. So I will just share tab. It is like not completely gone, the color, but has become considerably less. You can see the color has become quite light. Still would have some starch here. So maybe another round of spit has to go in. We'll try again and show you after a while. So we will see it after a while. Meanwhile, so I will come to I have removed spotlight. So meanwhile, let's come to the digestive system. So friends, we are very fond of making these schematic diagrams because biological diagrams are actually complicated. So to explain, it is good to like make simple scheme of things, simple plan of things. So this is our schematic diagram. I will request you to make it yourself. On top is the mouth. This is the esophagus. This is stomach. And after the stomach, this is small intestine. Then there is large intestine. And this is the anus or rectum. And here is the pancreas. And here is the liver. From the liver, deliberately we've shown with a triangle so that it can be remembered. And from the liver, there is bile duct going and there is a gallbladder attached to it. So I am going to draw this on a board, and I will request you to also draw it on a paper. So I will now, so once we start the tab will be looking at the, so here's, and probably we'll need to close some curtains because there's too much light here. And even at least, I think the two lights will have to be closed. A little bit of light is needed. So so I'm drawing this. You can also draw. So here's the mouth, and from the mouth, the esophagus, and after that, the stomach. And after the stomach, so the stomach, then इसका साउंड लेंगे उसका ले अच्छा you should tell me whether I'm clearly audible थोड़ा सा लाइट friends, can you hear me properly? नहीं थोड़ा more light हाँ little more हाँ this is fine. Can you hear me properly? It's echoing.
Yes. Yes.
There is echo. Okay, friends. So we have this schematic diagram. What we will do is that we will show various things happening inside this one by one. So the first thing that enters is we will show it as a carbohydrate. So this is supposedly a starch chain. So I'm deliberately showing it with the help of, I mean, like there are paper clips sometimes when this whole exercise we actually do in a classroom with children and drawing this on the ground. But here we are doing some both. So deliberately we have made a chain out of, and each of these is a glucose molecule, and this is a glucose chain of glucose, which is starch. So starch enters the mouth. So somebody is eating, think of it as a potato or rice, and the starch enters. So some amount of digestion starts here, which means that some of this chain will be broken by salivary amylase right here. So which means the enzyme, we are showing enzymes with the help of scissors deliberately to cut off the molecules, some molecules. So I'm cutting off. This is the salivary amylase. So some glucose gets released here. That's why you get the sweet taste. If you chew enough, chew the starches or carbohydrates enough, so some glucose is released. That's why you start getting this sweet taste. And then the food travels. So this is now traveling down the esophagus into the stomach. So this travels. Now here in the stomach, we know that one major thing that enters is so stomach walls actually give off hydrochloric acid. So we are deliberately showing it with some rice particles, but you can use anything white. I mean, not necessarily white, but yeah, something to show. So this is basically stomach acid mixing with the food. This is not getting light, so maybe a little bit. So why do you think there's acid in a very strong acid inside? Why do you think there is acid added to the food? So what purpose does it serve? Right. So as Martha is saying, activating pepsin. So any enzyme that act in the stomach has to have an acidic medium. So they firstly the medium is made acidic, and then as this acid, this strong acid, which is so strong that it can dissolve metal. It has also another important function, which is so Uma Sharma is saying to accelerate the rate of reaction. Yeah, it makes the medium acidic. So pepsin acts only in acidic medium, but any other function? Okay. Yeah, Martha has also said kills bacteria. Yes, that's a very important function, that any harmful bacteria, any kind of bacteria are killed here. So yeah, to kill germs. So this is, and other than that, actually carbohydrates don't get digested in the stomach. So they move ahead after, about remaining for 3 hours, roughly 3 hours in the stomach. This sphincter opens, and this sphincter here would close. After the food has entered, this sphincter will close and will not let it go backwards, but this sphincter will open and allow the food inside. So it goes to the small intestine, the initial part, duodenum. The small intestine has two kinds of juices coming here. One is coming from pancreas and one from liver. So the bile is actually yellow or rather green color. Actually, I should have taken green for bile, but doesn't matter. So both of these, so bile actually comes from the liver and gets collected, is already like stored in the gallbladder. So gallbladder does the storage work. So whenever food arrives here, now some bile is released into the small intestine, and similarly the pancreas releases its juice into the small intestine. So now the in small intestine digestion of this has to be completed. So so here again we will use another scissors to cut down all the molecules. Actually, we have made these chains very large. We should have used smaller chains, but basically, I mean, I will just show some cutting down. So basically, the big chains, big carbohydrate, big or small, whatever kind of carbohydrate chains are there, they are like broken down into individual glucose particles or individual glucose molecules, and these molecules are absorbed through the intestine walls. There is those villi or small projections which absorb all this into the blood. So all this goes into the body, into the blood. So all the glucose here will be actually broken down and absorbed into the blood. So basically none of this will remain. I'm just removing it here, just showing that glucose, any waste. So I will have to show some waste also. Any waste or substances which the body cannot actually digest will move on to the large intestine along with water. So all this will, the large intestine will absorb the water, and all the undigested substances, as well as all this, the bile waste and the other juices waste, all that, everything. Bile waste has a lot of dead red blood cells. So all that, whatever is to be thrown out, gets mixed up here, along with bacteria, etc. All those are thrown out of the large intestine. I'll come to the function of large intestine later, but basically the starch has been now digested. So once again, now similarly we'll show fats and proteins also. So for fats I have made, you can make anything with, think of you having a lot of butter. So this is like, I have on an eraser, I have put these 3 strips. So the fat enters esophagus, comes to the stomach. Once again, there's stomach acid, and then after staying the stomach, the fat also enters the small intestine. Now digestion of fat means the digestion of fat will require the fat first to be broken down. This is coming up. It requires breaking down fat into very small droplets, because fat doesn't mix with water, and the medium for our body's functioning is water. So fat must be broken down into smaller particles or emulsified. We will show you emulsification a little later, but that's the job of the bile. So bile does 2 things. Bile, which was here in the gallbladder, bile will come and first emulsify fat, which means break it down into small droplets. And also bile is alkaline. It changes the medium from acidic to alkaline here, so all the enzymes here work in an alkaline medium. The medium completely switches to alkaline here. So now enzymes to digest fat, like lipase, would be now acting on the fat and breaking it up into just its constituent parts, which is like fatty acids and cholesterol. Once again, these will be absorbed by the blood. I mean, like that, this is coming off, so I'm just showing it just like that. But so fatty acids and glycerol all digested, and any remaining substances will go to the large intestine and eventually moved out of the rectum. Now the third is, of course, I didn't show it happening with the scissors, but here also enzymes are working. Enzymes are working for everything. So similarly, we have proteins. We have deliberately shown proteins with the help of multicolored chain to give the idea that these are different amino acids. So this is some kind of protein with different amino acids. So it's a chain with, so now the body, so you are supposed eating protein, suppose egg or pulses or meat or milk, and the protein travels down to the stomach. Once again, there is stomach acid poured on the protein, bacteria killed, and also pepsin starts acting. So pepsin breaks protein. So the pepsin will come here and start releasing the individual amino acids. So see, this is deliberate. The cutting action is to show children that all amino acids must get now released. It must, this protein must break properly. So I'll take another scissors. Different amino acids are cut or rather broken down. So partial digestion has happened here. After that, it moves to the small intestine, where trypsin comes, and of course, as usual, bile comes and pancreatic juice comes. So more digestion happens, and all of these amino acids are released and absorbed by the blood on both sides. On all, blood is running all across the villi, all across the surface of the small intestine. It will absorb whatever nutrients are useful will be absorbed by the blood. So all this will actually get digested and absorbed by the small intestine. Anyways, well, I should have had some waste here, but anyways, well, I'll show it only with thread. Any waste remaining, which also is actually a lot of waste is fiber. So that way the waste moves to the large intestine. So this fiber plus bacteria plus any other waste in the juices or in food which our body cannot digest, all of that moves outside, first stored in the rectum and moves out of anus. So this is how, we are showing it through this just to use physical substances, concrete substances or materials to give the idea of digestion. So I will now stop this and come back to our usual screen. Okay, so Uma Sharma is asking why faces is yellow in color and stink. Firstly, it has like a lot of bile. So bile is green yellow, but much of that color comes from the liver releasing dead blood cells into the faces. The dead, like red blood cells die in a large numbers, and they have to be thrown out somewhere. So they are actually sent by the liver along with the bile. They are sent by the liver in the intestine itself, so that they are thrown in the faces. So one very large part is red blood cells, then bile salts, and whatever is left of the enzymes. Enzymes are left, actually. Enzymes are never consumed. So enzymes are left, so they are also in the faces, but a large part of faces is actually bacteria. bacteria which largely reside in the large intestine. I mean, our body carries like 2-3 kgs of bacteria, 2-3 kilos of a large number of bacteria. They have multiple functions, but every time we defecate, part of that colony gets thrown out. So, I mean, there would be about like 0.5 to 1 kg of bacteria are thrown out every day. So much of that colony is thrown out, but new gets formed. And it may sound very gross to you, but those our bodies are colonies of those bacteria, and they have a large number of useful functions. They actually help in digestion. There are certain vitamins which we cannot digest by ourselves. So bacteria digest those vitamins. And actually, if you want to get into detail of functions of those bacteria, you can ask Swapna Khare ma'am, because for her it's a field of specialization. So Swapna ma'am, you can talk a little more about this.
Hello. Basically, what we have is we have millions of bacteria actually living in our intestine, and they help us in digesting foods, especially plant carbohydrates, which our enzymes cannot digest. And they also actually help us in making several vitamins. So vitamin B12, vitamin K, which we cannot really make that much in our body, especially vitamin K is supplied to us by these bacteria. In turn, they get shelter. So this is especially, and including milk. Milk is mainly digested by these bacteria. So as we become adults, actually we cannot digest milk proteins very well, or milk sugar. That's why many people have lactose intolerance. So these bacteria make lactase and actually help us in digesting milk. So especially in Asian countries where we consume a lot of milk as adults, we need these bacteria, without which we will not be able to digest milk. And they also help us in, basically because they are there, we don't get infections from bacteria in our food. So they protect us, and they also help us in digesting foods. And in turn, they get shelter and ready-made food for themselves. So that is how it's a mutually working association.
And I guess you should also talk about fiber, the role of fiber.
Okay. So fiber is something, basically there are different types of fibers, but fiber is something which completely does not break down. So when the food is being pushed from esophagus onwards through stomach, small intestine, large intestine, peristalsis alone will not be able to push the food. So having fiber actually makes this movement much smoother. And another way is it also helps in cleaning your intestine. So because fiber is there, it is able to give a good dragging force, so that intestines are cleaned, and it also basically cleans your intestines, so makes these bacterial structures very healthy for you. So it allows them to cling happily to the intestine. So fiber works not only in a different ways for your good bowel health. So for complete digestion, you need to have insoluble fiber in your food.
Yeah, that's why I mean, nutritionists keep saying, please have more vegetables, please have vegetable peas, and also don't refine your flour. I mean, have unrefined
Yeah.
Full wheat, whole wheat.
Even rice, actually, we polish everything because it looks better, and then we remove a lot of fiber.
Yeah. So if you have any other question to Swapna ma'am, you can ask. I of course have a few things to add, which I will add in a while.
And actually another thing I wanted to add was that the yellow brown color is because of a pigment called as bilirubin. So that's a breakdown product of hemoglobin. So if you really see change in your feces color, it could indicate that something is not working right with your liver or pancreas. So the color is mainly because of bilirubin. That's why you get yellow color in your skin when you have jaundice, because liver is not able to function.
She's asking why it stinks.
That is because of the bacterial action. So they are doing so much for us. In return, because they are unable to digest, they are producing gas and something. So that is why the bad smell. And actually the bad smell increases after some time, because then bacterial decomposition begins. So that's a different thing. We may not want to go into it today. So for some other time.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, but
That's
yeah,
right.
in fact, people say stomach gas is also healthy actually. Passing wind is actually healthy.
Yeah. You should not suppress, definitely. Passing, because gas will be produced by the intestinal organisms, so that it has to be released. So that is their metabolism actually.
So why is this cooking care should be taken to maintenance of nutrients present in food? So Swapna ma'am, you can add to that.
Is there maintenance? Yes, you should not overcook it, I would say. So nothing should be cooked just enough and washed enough. Otherwise, and have enough raw food in your diet. Everything should not be cooked.
Aruna Pradhan has asked, does it also contain ammonia?
Ammonia in very minor form. Having a lot of ammonia in your digestive system is not a healthy sign. So
Yeah, because that is taken out by kidneys, isn't it?
yes, yeah. Mostly it is methane and other gases, not ammonia.
So we will show the emulsification of fat, which is something you can also do if you have, I mean, I had said, no, if you can bring a little bit of oil and water, I'll just, Assis will start the video on tab. So, yeah, and I'm just spotlighting. So, Assis will take some water. You can take that one only. Achha, oh, look at the our starch test. I mean, the in which we had put atta, wheat flour. Now the color is completely gone. So the amount of the saliva Assis had put in has now completely digested the starch and would have changed it into glucose. So all the color of the starch test has gone. So now the experiment has become complete. Now the second thing is, now we are showing emulsification of fat. So you can see that if we put like oil over water, it makes a completely separate layer. They are not mixing at all. But in this form, we cannot digest fat. So some alkaline thing has to be added. So right now we will put a drop of soap, liquid soap. You can even take the other soap and make a solution. So we'll just put one drop of liquid soap. So we have Vim here. So she'll just put a drop and we will mix. So the fat will get emulsified, which means, yeah. And now she will shake. So you can see that the fat layer has started breaking up actually and starts getting mixed with water, which means if you see it closely, you will see a large number of small fat droplets. And if we put a little bit more of soap, maybe a little bit more, it will get almost white. The whole thing will become white because of this. Shedin Lama has asked, hydrogen sulfide? Yes. Actually, there is hydrogen sulfide gas in the fat. Because of bacterial action on sulfurous compounds. So here, as you can see, the fat getting completely emulsified. Is it possible to show it close to the camera, or maybe you can show from your mobile on top of the camera on this? Yeah, we can see fat droplets. So fat is actually getting into, turning into very small droplets on which enzymes can act. So emulsification of fat is very essential for digestion. Of course, we emulsify fat in not only in cooking, in so many food products. In fact, mayonnaise is nearly completely, I mean, there's a lot of emulsified fat. It's mayonnaise is white because of this emulsified fat. So this is an experiment you can easily do at home and also show in your classroom, right? So, okay, thank you, Assis. Both experiments done quite well. So Dicky has asked a question. So Swapna, ma'am, would you want to answer this?
I would just say that having anything heavy that is high protein or high fat, your digestive system cannot digest it properly. And if you go to sleep, ma'am showed you esophagus, and then there is valve at the beginning of the stomach and at the end of the stomach. So if you overeat or if you have heavy food, what will happen is these valves don't function efficiently. So you will have food coming up. So that is what gives you the acid reflux. And so actually we party at night at dinner time, but having heavy food at night is not good for your digestive system. It cannot handle. That's why you will have acidity. And more protein, so more acid has to be used to digest that protein. So you will have more secretion for stomach. So you will have more acidity.
Right. Any other question? So friends, I had just a few more things to show. So, I mean, okay, like we have shown, we have already talked about it. Okay, Aruna Pradhan is asking, how does concentration of uric acid increase and cause health issues? So Swapna ma'am, you can take that question.
But uric acid, it's actually to do with kidney health. So basically what happens is uric acid is being acidic creates problems in the functioning of your linings in your connective tissue. Are you asking about gout? Aruna Pradhan, are you asking about condition called as gout? So that is basically because, and generally that they ask you to not to consume certain foods which will have more uric acid production. So things like tomatoes or spinach have certain compounds which will cause actually production of more uric acid. So it creates problem in the connective joints. So that's a very different part of digestive system to explore. And fatty liver, again, it's a I don't know that much about fatty liver situation, so I would not be able to explain it. Maybe Assis can try.
But it is, I mean, when I read about it, it's actually accumulation of fat in the liver. When we have a higher concentration of triglycerides in our blood, then they get stored in liver. So,
but yeah, that is true. But there is some imbalance or problem at some enzyme level or something like that, which causes that. And that I have read long ago, but I don't remember it right now.
okay.
So.
So yeah, so friends, if there are questions that we can't answer just now, we'll just come back to you with those answers, and we'll have to of course check those. I mean, well, as you know, human health is a very, very large field, and actually medical people have to go into those details of, we have hundreds of organs and thousands of problems with those kind of problems that can happen with those organs. So, so right now, let's, I mean, I just wanted to talk about like 2-3 more things. One was, of course, stomach acid role. I've already talked about it, but it's like, it destroys bacteria in food, and it's, you can see the pH ranges, stomach acid pH ranges from 1.5 to 3.5. which is extremely acidic. It's very strong acid. So one question is, why doesn't such a strong acid attack stomach lining. So why do you think, I mean, after all, if it can attack metal, it can also digest the stomach itself, burn the stomach. Why doesn't it burn the stomach? Any idea? Yeah, as Martha says, there's a very thick layer of mucus in the stomach. Yeah, yeah. So there's this mucus layer, and actually, if sometimes the mucus layer becomes thin, or there is a special type of bacteria which get embedded in this mucus, H. pylori, then we get ulcers. I mean, ulcers means the stomach lining gets actually attacked. It gets attacked or gets thin, and there the stomach lining starts getting attacked by the acid itself, and wounds develop or raw areas develop, which we call as ulcers. So that's actually either the stomach acid getting too much, or mucus lining becoming thin, or a certain type of bacteria actually entering mucus lining. Every bacteria cannot do it, but some bacteria are smart enough, particularly H. pylori, which is now considered the reason for stomach ulcers. So they get into the stomach line, the mucus line. Here we have talked about the role of bile. So it changes medium from acidic to alkaline and also emulsifies fat, as we just showed. Now we just wanted to talk about the special case of herbivores. I mean, cows, buffaloes, or all those animals which eat mostly grasses and leaves. So actually they need to digest the tough fibers of cellulose. Now, what is cellulose? Actually, cellulose, firstly, I'll show you the structure of cellulose. So cellulose has these fibrils, like very tiny fibers, which are also made, I mean, if you see the structure of cellulose, it's also like those glucose molecules joined together, but actually these fibrils are joined with each other with hydrogen bonds. So actually cellulose fibrils are very tough. They are very hard, and we can't digest them. I mean, humans do not have the capacity to digest them at all. So any cellulose which enters our system just passes out as in our faces. So we just throw it out of our system. And this cellulose is also there in cell walls. And these cellulose fibrils help maintain the plant structures, the plant stem, plants don't have bones. So cellulose, being a tough material, helps plant maintain their shape and structure. So they have a lot of cellulose. So cellulose is generated out of glucose only by plants. But digestion is not easy. And as the last slide says, only bacteria have that capacity. Only bacteria can actually digest cellulose. We don't harbor those bacteria. Our intestines don't keep those bacteria. But herbivores have a system where they have they keep these bacteria, especially for doing this job. So they have actually what is called as they have a different digestive system with having 4 parts. Like it is said that they have 4 stomachs. You call them stomachs or whatever, but they are 4 parts to it. And basically, when a cow will take in grass, so initially grass is just quickly like chewed and taken and kept in the first 2 portions. First 2 portions, it will keep the grass, and then later when it does chewing the cud, it will bring back some part of the food to its mouth again, and keep chewing it for a long time, so that the fibers are broken and they are then again chewed portion is sent back to the third and the fourth part. So the third and the fourth part actually then have a large, very large number of bacteria which work for many hours on this cellulose to break down cellulose to its individual molecules. So cellulose is broken down by bacteria, sorry. So then once that cellulose is broken down into glucose, then the small intestine absorbs it. And the interesting part is that cows have much larger number of bacteria than we have. Cows and buffaloes and all the herbivores have much larger number of bacteria. So even those bacteria are digested by their system and absorbed as protein. So the source of protein is the bacteria themselves. So a cow would typically take 2-3 kgs of bacteria, digest them and use them as protein. But next day when she chews more cud, then more bacteria get generated there. The bacteria eat the grass or cellulose. They eat the cellulose and thrive. So the cow digests the bacteria as well as the broken cellulose. So broken cellulose or glucose is absorbed by the cow. So in a way, herbivores are the animals who have evolved separate, especially to be able to digest cellulose. And that's why, I mean, what herbivores eat, we cannot eat. We can't even live on. If we have no food and we try eating leaves and grass, some leaves we can digest. I mean, we can all digest like soft leaves, like spinach, and even spinach we cook, but there are uncooked leaves also which we can digest. I mean, we have lettuce and we have coriander and things like that. But soft leaves we can, but largely we cannot digest leaves and grasses. The cellulose part we cannot digest. So that's why the herbivores have a special digestive system.